of consumer interests. Today, we'll learn about these guidelines and what it means to you, and how organizations can align innovation with compliance, and how responsible AI can become not just regulatory requirement but a strategic advantage as well. Before we start, a few housekeeping rules. This is a listen-only webinar. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions. You can actually type in those questions in the Q&A section, and which we'll take it up towards the end of the session. So before we start, I'd like to introduce the speaker. We've got two speakers today. It is Renju Varghese and Dr. Anjan Krishnamurthy. Renju comes with 19 years of experience in cybersecurity and research and development. He's leading tech. As a VP of leading tech, he has been a driving force behind innovative security practices and breakthrough products at CISA, particularly on the hardware security and AI. His brainchild is also AI Prism, which primarily Prism stands for Privacy, Risk Identifications, and Security Management of AI. He also has co-authored the CSPI and CIDR training programs that we have, and he has also contributed, or rather, he contributes every year to the CISA Top 5 Forensic Report that CISA releases every year. The next speaker is Dr. Anjan Krishnamurthy. He is a cybersecurity expert again with 19 years of experience spanning industry innovation, academic excellence, and applied research. He also holds 5 patents in cybersecurity on AI domains. He has also authored over 75 publications in prestigious international journals and conferences. He has served as adjunct professor with BITS, mentoring the next generation of cybersecurity experts as well. Together, the team of CISA has also applied for 5 patents on AI security. And not taking much of your time, I'll probably pass it on to Dr. Anjan to take the session forward. Over to you, Dr. Anjan.
Thank you, Gopal. So the entire focus for today's session is on the practical implementation of the entire AI governance, which is on a very, very bottom-up approach of what this entire AI governance is all about, and how do we basically stitch the end-to-end security practices and as well as the governance part, which is going to be a very key focused in the operations part of it, and will be a very leading insights for organizations to deal with it, especially with the Qatar Central Bank regulations on AI. Very important governance is of a 4-quadrant approach, which is with the permitted functionality, the accountability, the safeguards, as well as the security and monitoring. And it starts at a very baseline structure of a policy that is basically put in, and the technical controls and the overall mechanism or the oversight mechanism, which is there at a policy level aspect of it. But when you come to the AI system is a very different altogether, basically because it is a very complex supply chain comprising of data, model, as well as the application. And it requires a comprehensive overview of governing this entire life cycle, ensuring this entire life cycle is properly governed, safeguarded, and secured with a focus on responsible AI part of it. So to do that, there are multiple industry standards which basically give us the guidelines and also give the standards of how we have to start off with the governance structure, majorly dealing with the ISO set of families, which is talking about the ISO 42001, which is basically an AIMS, a derivative from 27001 and 23894, and as well as the NIST-AI RMF, talking about multiple risk scenarios and the risk management in its life cycle. And of course, the Qatar Central Bank AI regulations talking about the AI security, continuous testing, the continuous monitoring, which is a part of the regulatory work frame of the entire artificial intelligence for the entire banking sector for the Qatar, which basically talks about the entire guidance of how a customer-facing artificial intelligence application should be and how it should be responsible in terms of taking it over. There are multiple categories of AI regulations, AI in an organizations. So every organization may come in any of these 3 segments of the AI categories. One category is the AI integrated internally to the application, which is hosted within the organization, and majority of them falls in this section, basically because they are all conversational agents, either a chatbot or a fraud detection models, decision engines, which are with the high governance responsibility, where what is being put across to the other side becomes utmost important in this particular application. The second vertical, what we are looking at in the category of AI, is the third party hosted or a managed AI, which is basically a cloud AI service or a third party AI models or a third party AI application being hosted in the environment or managed in the environment. And the third is the completely different one, which is basically a SaaS AI used by the employees. External tools like the generative AI platforms, the multiple different AI platform tools, where the governance has to be indirect and implicit in terms of how the usage policies as well as monitoring needs to be followed for such kind of AI platforms. So either of these applications fall in either of these three categories of what we speak about in the usage of AI or the deployment of AI or whatever that we basically mentioned it. The AI governance structure has three important verticals. One, the entire regulation and the standards basically talk about the domain families. What domain are we basically applying this entire governance for? What are the areas in which we are trying to apply? Second is the control family. What are the logic grouping of these safe controls, what we talk about? And the third is the control, which is basically controls, which basically talks about specific testable requirement and implementation evidences that we are talking about. So for instance, when I'm talking about a runtime and a test, it can basically be the runtime of the model and the agent security. And also the control can be the how this entire runtime model is safe or secured in terms of understanding its vulnerability by exercising a security testing on that, which is the GenAI application pen testing, where the evidence would be clearly on the penetration testing report, which gives a complete vulnerability map of my entire AI application. So likewise, we can also have a runtime on the other contrary, where there is a continuous monitoring that is required, where there is an AI observability, which talks about the entire token logging as a control, and the logs as well as the dashboard help us understand the health of the entire AI application throughout this entire structure. So this is a very, very important structure in understanding it, because the mapping of the domain, the control family, and the controls are something which is a very significant start step for the AI governance structure when we are trying to actually implement it. So implementing AI governance in production, there are four important things that needs to be done. These are very, very significant steps as what we speak, because this will basically are the stepping stones for understanding the governance at a very practical perspective. So the first step is to understand what is the entire inventory all about. Discover every and each AI assets which are available in the entire organization. Second is do a thorough risk testing or the risk assessment of each of these AI assets which you have in the environment. Third, looking at the testing report and the evidences, how do you ensure that you prevent a misuse of these, what has been a very significant report of the testing? And fourth, having placed the control, the next important case is to ensure that the AI does not misbehave. So that is where you'll have to continuously monitor this entire spectrum and see how the AI models are continuously being with the governance and observability being used for it to ensure that it doesn't deviate away from its intended purpose or the intended use as such. So that is the reason why, to start with, it's absolutely crucial and important to start with a AI inventory or a AI bomb, which talks about AI bill of materials, which is a structured inventory set talking about all AI related assets in the environment. And why it becomes very important, because we have seen SBOM as a similar software. It becomes a fundamental step in the governance of understanding your own AI element, what is there in the environment, and what are the models which are basically used, what versions are they, who owns them, who is accountable for them, where are the data coming from, and multiple such kind of questionnaires which comes into picture, which is a very, very discovery kind of a question, which can give us the entire pipeline and understand what are the AI assets which are there in the environment. So what should the final look of the AI inventory be? It's a centralized inventory which can categorize all the AI system by its ownership and the risk part of it. So the inventory can be categorized as per the three categories of AI within the organization as what we discussed. But today there is a lot of ask, and there is also a buzzword which is on the shadow AI, which are unapproved tools which are basically discovered in the monitoring stage. So the four categories which are there in the entire inventory stage is something that is a part of the entire inventory report. And then it becomes a foundation to do a risk assessment, the audit, as well as the regulatory reporting. So knowing your AI system is the first basic step in proceeding with the next step, which is the risk assessment or the security testing part, where the controls are basically enabled by the AI bombs, where the entire AI bomb governance can basically give us the complete comprehensive governance, what is required to run over the entire life cycle, with the control domain being focused adequately on this, which can look at the entire control supported and what is the readiness with the entire stakeholders in implementing this particular AI bomb. So the AI deployments are where data controls can apply. So there are multiple different data controls which are basically there. And this is different from the way in which we look at it, because every AI system is different. We may have a fine-tuned LLM, we may have a ML systems in it, or we may have a RAG, we may have an MCP, we may have multiple different ways in which the entire architecture can be built up. And that is a case where the key risk which is associated with each type of the model becomes very important. And the AI deployment is where it drives the data control of how we are going to look at it. Because the primary concerns or the risk which basically appears on that is the PII leakage, the regulatory violations, the bias, a lot of other things which are related to the data vertical part. So the data set control is basically something which is required for the AI governance. And that basically gives a complete visibility on the data related controls of what can go wrong with the data, including the data element having a sensitive information of the data, scanning for that, including of PCI, PHI, and PII kind of a data, and also the bias detection, which is inherently might be there in the entire data pipeline and which may go unseen with the entire policy itself. And as far as the RAG or the other kind of training is included, it requires the entire vector database as well as the document stored to be completely, classified and completely looked over with the control, which is essential in terms of understanding the entire data points. So that brings us to the very significant question. So you have now identified the data pipeline, you have now identified the AI assets. What next? The next important question is you need to subject your entire AI application to a thorough security testing. So industry calls it by different names like red teaming, Gen AI app PT testing, and multiple things. But this is a very, very important and a very crucial point, because ultimately AI models are nothing but the models which are trained with legitimate as well as jettison data. An adversarial prompt can just tweak the behavior of the model. And that's where it becomes very crucial to know what are the vulnerabilities of my model. So the vulnerability may of the model inherently may be susceptible to prompt injections, it may be susceptible to data extraction, model manipulations, unauthorized actions by AI agents, toxic and unsafe outputs, several categories of model unsafe cases. A lot of case which basically comes in it, because ultimately AI is a black box nature and traditional security is totally insufficient to distinguish these kinds of threat, because they are completely on the AI vertical part. The fundamental AI security assumption is that if an attacker can influence prompt or an input, they will attempt to manipulate the model, because the attempt of the input to the model is through the prompts. And that's where security testing validates thoroughly the entire AI system of how the AI can basically leak information, or how it can override its own guardrails, execute unwanted or unauthorized instructions, and several other harmful consequences which can basically be looked at in the wide category of what can go wrong in the AI LLM models. So the security testing of AI application becomes absolutely crucial And the process is commonly called as red teaming, as I mentioned, adversarial testing, and with different names. We all mean the same, because at the end of the day, you are trying to test your AI model, right? The model testing is what is very important with respect to the prompt and the system instructions or the system prompts, what is used, and how is the workflow basically built with the entire AI application. So it's very critical for an AI governance to have this evidence part to understand the entire vulnerability of the entire AI system, thereby take the next level of risk assessment and as well as proceed with what can be done to patch up this entire vulnerability set so that it's made much more secure in the entire vertical. Why do we have to go beyond OWASP? OWASP basically provides the LLM top 10 vulnerability every year. So every year there is a huge coverage of different prompt-based injection attacks which are possible on LLMs and new attack methods which are basically there. And there are several spectrum of the attacks which are completely missed out in the OWASP, and they are truly real world and they may not be simulated. Something like the MCP exploits, something like the AI attacks which are on the encoding part, language manipulations. My model is very safe when I talk to it in the English, but when I talk to it in French, it breaks. So there are several different cases where the testing has to go beyond this level. And that's where it becomes very important to emphasize the governance testing, not on the categorical based testing, but technique plus tactic based techniques, which ensures a lot more safer and a lot more coverage of the entire testing part, which includes even the OWASP, which is a fundamental and also an extended beyond that. The approach is very simple. Every attack technique test with multiple evasion tactics. It may be prompt injection to test the base info, 64 encoding, Unicode, JSON wrapping, multiple language part of it, multiple coverage or simulate realistic adversarial test cases which are there on it, which can basically unearth and truly cover the real secrets of the model, where how the model is basically trying to react with. So with this, I would like to hand over it to my co-speaker today, Ranju, to take the further set.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Ranjan. Hi, good afternoon, team. We talked about testing the models, right? So for uh, while you initiate the testing, right, we basically going to test on how the application is interacting with these models. So when you're going to take a Gen AI application pen test, we are going to talk about what are the various workflows through which this particular application is interacting with a LLM or an AI agent. Whether is it a chatbot, whether is it making a decision to approve a particular loan, or is it an agentic system in place which is going to take a specific action like in an agentic SOC going taking action of restricting or removing a particular system from the EDR or removing a particular file through an EDR system, right? So it is very important that through this particular Gen AI application pen test, we can actually define the risk which can happen, right? So what we planned is that once through our AI bomb, right, we were able to identify what are the various ways in which an application interacts with an LLM or through an agentic AI part. Now, for that particular interaction, can you identify the various risk scenarios or threat profiles, right? So when you say risk scenarios, what you meant is that how that particular interaction can be compromised. Compromise with rights to extracting the data, compromise with regards to compromising the system, compromising with means to compromising the business logic part. So once you're able to define for each of these AI interactions, what is the risk scenarios and threat profiles? That risk scenarios and threat profiles can be then be used to see whether that particular model is susceptible or vulnerable to that threat profile. So we can do that, right? So once we have defined the AI bomb, we can then able to define, okay, what map the various workflows through which that application interacts, right? And identify those inference points. And you also define the misuse scenario, which is nothing but your workflows and threat scenarios. From the threat scenarios, generate test cases. Because if you're going to test an agentic system, you need those test cases or the malicious prompts. So based on your scenarios, you generate those set of test cases. And once the test case has been generated, mutate that test case with the various attack techniques and tactics which Dr. Ranjan mentioned earlier. So with that, you are able to generate a set of business aware testing and not just technical fuzzing technique part of it. How it is benefit from a governance, AI governance benefit? Because whatever scenarios you have identified for each of these AI interactions, you can directly use it as part of your risk register and able to do an AI risk assessment, right? So you have a much more structured way of doing AI risk assessment than just doing via an Excel sheet. Now, this approach is being recommended in the new OWASP guide, which has been released, I think, in the month of January, where they have in the guide, the OWASP guide, they have clearly mentioned that when you're going to do a testing, you need to ensure that you are able to identify or who are using testing, whether it's the vendor or an application part, or you do it manually, you have to be able to identify those inference points and generate scenarios in which that particular inference point can be compromised. So when you're going to map, right, if once you've done the red teaming and red profiling, how it's going to be beneficial for your AI governance? So whether the AI governance is with regards to the Central Bank of Qatar AI governance or NIST, ARMF, or ISO 42001, how these particular activities can actually comply. It can comply with your risk assessment, because whatever you risk scenarios and threat profiles you identify from your AI interactions, you can directly put it into your risk register. So helps in your risk assessment, helps in your security assurance, because you can be assured that your agentic AI system or AI application has been properly tested, the robustness of the model, compliance, and audit readiness aspect. So initially we talked about doing an AI bomb to identify your inference points. So AI bomb identifies what exists within your application, and while red team will validate whether is it safe, so that there is a both together ensure that there is a complete assurance coverage with regards to your AI governance. So once you identify the vulnerabilities via the red teaming or GenAI application pen test, how to go about mitigating those vulnerabilities? So there are various methods in which we can go ahead and mitigate. The most commonly used mitigation strategy is a LLM firewall or guardrails. So consider like the web application firewalls. LLM firewalls basically analyze all the inputs to a particular agent or an AI application. It filters the inputted data, whether it is a user inputted data or whether it is an inputted data via an application workflow. It validates that particular input, validates the output aspect, whether the output doesn't have any PI data and just per the requirement. And also through a guardrails and firewalls, we can also maintain your access restrictions for your agentic agents as well. So that's one part. So here, LLM firewall and guardrail is basically residing outside your models. It's actually an external layer which we actually deploy to ensure that all the interactions to your models is properly filtered out. The second option is basically secure fine-tuning of open source LLMs. So in case if you have deployed an open source LLMs within your agentic AI applications, then you can go ahead and do a secure fine-tuning of those open source LLMs. It's basically applicable to open source LLMs, but it's not applicable in case if you're using a proprietary models. So in this scenario, if using open source models like your Mistrals, DeepSeek, Llama, etc., you can go ahead and do a secure fine-tuning of those models. Then the third level is basically a access restrictions. So access restriction with regards to your least privilege for your agents and ensuring that you have a rate limiting feature. So by default, the rate limiting is one of the most important control to be deployed, not just from a security perspective, but from your cost perspective as well, because it ensures that your API or your LLM cannot be misused by just bombarding or doing a kind of a DOS kind of an attack as well. So rate limiting uh, is a default features to be deployed. These are the few of the controls which can deploy to ensure that whatever vulnerabilities that we have identified as part of our GenAI application pen testing can be mitigated. So one of the most important step with regards to AI governance is to ensure that we do a retesting after the controls are deployed. Why? Because we need to ensure that the controls functions correctly, we need to ensure that the exploits are properly blocked, and there is no residual risk which is present. Because security without any verification is just an assumption that hey, we are secure. So once you deploy these controls, it's important that the GenAI application pen testing or the LLM red teaming is uh, uh, done again to ensure that those controls or the vulnerabilities are mitigated. So what controls or the domains gets covered by runtime protection? One is the model security, right? Because by deploying guardrails and secure fine tuning, we're ensuring that the model becomes secure. You're taking care of a runtime security with an LM firewalls. You can consider runtime security part of it. And for access management, you have the RBACs for access management. And for risk mitigation, we can ensure that we retest the model to mitigate those risks. So with proper controls deployment, you can ensure that you have a lot of prevention controls in place, and it just not detections aspect. Now we have done inventory, we are done a scan, identifying the vulnerabilities, we patch it up by deploying various prevention controls. What's the next step for a governance part? The next step is basically monitoring, or in the world of AI, it is known as AI observability. Why observability becomes so critical, right? Because through observability, we can ensure that, hey, does the model has changed, right? So if you know, right, about the models, there is a chance that the models can drift from its performance part. The models can drift from its defined guardrails part. So if you have used a model within your applications, you will know that within a span of few months, you can see a small change in which that particular model behaves. In our example, we use a malicious LLM that's been created by CISO itself for our LLM red teaming activities. Now, what we observed was that because we bombard that particular malicious LLM for generating a lot of this test case for testing, what we identified is that after a period of time, that model from being malicious become actually responsible, in the sense it's not able to generate that much malicious test case to us. So every models over a period of time, though it can actually drift apart. So you need to ensure that through observability, you can ensure that if that model has drifted, if there is a change in the prompt, because in your agentic AI applications or normal AI applications, the system prompt plays a critical role. Right? So whether you are uh, pushing through your user inputted data, or your is part of the application workflow, the system prompt plays a very important role on how that particular application or AI interacts and give you a response back. So any change in a particular system prompt, monitoring of this, any change in the system prompt plays a very important role. Third, like this LLM teaming, every week we are seeing a new type of attack techniques which has been emerging, right? So if you have done a LLM red teaming 2 months back, there is new technique which has got emerged last week. So these new techniques may not be properly supported or prevented by your LLM firewalls. So through monitoring, you can ensure that, hey, we are able to capture all those new attack technique part of it. And also if there is any data pattern evolution which is happening. So because AI governance is not a one-time activity, right? It's like security. It's like to ensure that it's continuous. So AI observability helps you ensure that there's a continuous monitoring for your AI applications. So the question comes in is what happens without observability? So without observability, your various incidents goes undetected, right? You cannot able to identify if there is an attack or there's an incident on your AI applications. You're not able to analyze your root cause. So if you want to do any forensic analysis or any kind of an investigations, you don't have the right data to do a root cause analysis. And from an AI governance aspect, your explainability is very weak, because most of the AI governance requirements, including the Qatar Bank's QBC, Qatar Central Bank's uh, uh, regulations also requires that you should be able to explain the decisions made by your high risk AI systems. Right. So without AI observability, your explainability become also very big. So AI observability becomes a backbone for security to ensure that whatever LLM red teaming and controls you deploy, you can still ensure that okay, there is security layer, because there's new attack techniques that happen, you can be able to identify. You're able to have explainability component added. You can also ensure that it is responsible. How it is responsible, it comes down in the it down in the slide. And also, in case if you want to do any incident response activities, which is again required by your AI governance guidelines, you can also do an incident response with AI observability aspect. So the question comes in is that, hey, can I use my traditional logging and my traditional SIM tools, my MXDR solutions for AI observability? Well, the answer is actually a no, right? Because the reasons are different, right? While in a traditional application, which is your current set of applications without an AI integrations, you basically are able to capture your request and response via your API logs, your error logs, your security logs, transaction traces, because it's more predictable, right? Because for a current set of applications, you know that, okay, if I send this particular input, this is going to be my predictable output with almost 100% accuracy aspect. But with regards to an AI, it is not always 100% predictable, right? Because till now, LLM models are probabilistic. It is more context driven, and it is non-deterministic part of it. So using your existing logging solutions and SIMs will not suffice, because you may not be able to answer that how the particular model has produced particular output. whether there was any hidden instruction which influenced it part. So some clients, what have done, they have just created a log of the request being sent to the LLM and the response received from the LLM and stored it. And they said that, hey, I'm able to capture the request and response. Will that suffice for NI observability? The answer is no, right? Because when you're going to send a request to a LLM, and if you have a RAG in place, or if you are actually sending any kind of a file with that particular request, then those data doesn't get captured in your proper request, right? Because it's going to be driven by context. So you need to ensure that you're able to capture the token part. Right? So for AI observability, the token level capture is most important. You need to should able to capture the token part of it. So how it can be done? It's basically done by ensuring that there is a framework called Open Telemetry Framework. So it gets integrated within your application source code part. So whenever an application, your normal application, interacts with an AI component, whether it's in agentic systems or with an LLMs, it's able to, through this open telemetry framework, we are able to capture that particular tokens part of it, right? So both the input token, the output token which has been received, and also in case if the model has a reasoning capability, we're also able to capture the reasoning tokens as well. So, and in the three tokens, if there is any RAG inference or if there is any file upload, all those data, because all the data goes as token to the LLM, also can be retrieved and can be used for your AI observability part. So there is something called open telemetry framework, and it gets integrated within your code for capturing the tokens aspect. And this is the most important thing which is going to be different from your monitoring, because from a monitoring from our existing infra, we always talks about logs and capturing the logs for doing that. Here is a little bit different approach of capturing the tokens for monitoring, right? So that's the reason why traditional SIMs alone will not sufficient, right? Because you need to ensure that you should be able to capture your tokens aspect. You can, because traditional SIMs just work for infrastructure events. But having said that, um, your AI observability tool can actually generate an event, and that event can be pushed to a traditional SIM for a monitoring and other purposes. So, from AI observability aspect, it can be a separate module together altogether, and the results, so the alerts generated by the AI observability module can be then passed to an SIM solutions for your day-to-day monitoring aspect. So the question comes in is that I am able to capture the tokens for AI observability. What should I monitor? So as part of AI observability and as part of AI governance, what there are three layers or three critical layers which needs to be monitored. Layer one is performance monitoring, right? Performance of that particular AI application. Sorry, the model. So performance with regards to any latencies, token usage, what is the cost per request, error rates, etc. So performance, which is basically can be used for uh, performance of the models and stuff. The second one is security monitoring, right? Ability to detect your adversarial or any malicious behavior as part of your input or output. So able to identify your prompt injections, any PI data leakage, any kind of a guardrail violations, or any unauthorized tool calls and everything. So as part of security monitoring, you can able to identify the same. The third one, which is the novel concept with regards to AI observability, is your drift monitoring, right? Because drift monitoring ensures that you are monitoring that whatever AI application that you are going into production is performing or is working as per your approved workflow, right? So if you've deployed a loan approval agent for approving auto-approving loans based on a few parameters and other KYC details, you have definitely done a proper testing and have deployed it based on these approved workflows. And with the drift monitoring, you can able to identify whether your models has drifted away from your approved set of workflows. So that way you can be able to explain that your models or your applications is responsible aspect, right? So in AI terms, when I say responsible, it ensures that your AI systems is working as per your approved workflows and it has not gone beyond your approved workflows, right? So that's the uh, responsible monitoring aspect. So through AI observability, you can observe that your AI systems has not gone beyond than what is being approved for that particular AI workflow part. Second one, you are also able to explain, right? Because you are not intended to explain every AI interactions, but if that particular AI interaction has been changed or drifted from your approved workflows, you can able to explain why it has drifted, whether it has drifted due to a change in the input data, whether it is drifted due to the change in the model behavior part of it, or whether it has changed uh, changed due to the reasoning aspect of that particular model. You can able to explain part, right? So in this drift, there is three components to capture. One is data drift, whether there is any change in the input data, right? Input to the model, whether it is a user input or an application workflow input or an input from another agentic system, any change in the uh, data drift in the input part. Then second one is a model drift, which is basically been analyzed through the output. So when the model is being given a specific output, whether the model has drifted from the expected output part of it. And the next one is the reasoning drift, which basically says that, hey, if you're able to capture reasoning tokens, you're able to analyze whether the reasoning approach, reasoning steps taken by the model, is there any change? So drift basically answers the one question is that, is my AI still behaving as what has been originally approved part? And it has changed or drifted from my approved mechanism. And that one question is the most critical question with regards to AI governance. Has my AI changed or behaving different from what it was supposed to do? So with just the AI observability, you can actually ensure that you can able to meet multiple uh, AI governance controls like security monitoring. You can able to detect attacks in real time, explainability, right? In case if you want a specific uh, scenario, you can always take that particular interactions and do the replay tokens and decision that has been taken. And also over a period of time, you can see whether the model has changed in its behavior of part. Third one is responsibility, right? You can ensure that a model is behaving as been through the approved workflow and approved guardrails. And if it has gone beyond, you can able to identify via a observability and ensure that okay, uh, you are working in a responsible AI system. Next one is instant response. So in case if the model has behaved in a different manner, and you can able to generate an alert, and you can also put a system of an incident playbook or a kill switch to kill that particular model, which is again required part by your governance requirement. And definitely performance tracking to ensure that the model's performance is being able to monitor. So with AI observability, you can ensure that your AI governance becomes measurable and also defensible as well. So what we have covered is to ensure that from the Qatar Central Bank regulations, if you take the regulations and go through in detail, you know that there is going to be a high risk AI system, right? So through using your AI bomb, and able to identify inventory, you will be able to identify, hey, what are of my all my AI applications are my high risk AI systems, and able to classify that, right? Able to define who is accountable for that particular activity, and able to mention that for this particular interactions, what this particular interactions is about, and then get it approved by your boards and senior management part. So your AI bomb please starts as a your foundation steps for your AI governance part. Now, the section 9 of the central bank guidelines talks about your AI security, right? So, by doing a Gen AI application pen testing, you can ensure that you can able to identify the vulnerabilities part of it, and by identifying the reference point, you can actually define your risk scenarios or threat profiles for each of your AI interactions and create your risk assessment part. So risk assessment is just not an Excel sheet part of it, but it's more driven by what your application does and how that particular application logic can be broken. And with runtime protections, again, your AI security coming from your central bank AI guidelines, you can ensure that your models is have privacy controls over on top of it. And then with observability, you can ensure that you are able to explain transparency of the model, your AI model and AI application. You are able to explain the explainability concept of model. You are able to monitor for security incidents for the model. You are able to ensure that in case if there is any incident happening, you can also do a forensic analysis through your AI observability tool. And also, in case if you want an incident playbook and do a kill switch, you can also drive it through an AI observability aspect. So by following this particular four step-by-step approach, you can ensure that 90% of the technical controls of your central bank AI guidelines is being implemented. And using this set of controls deployed, then the rest of the controls is more of procedural controls like policies, documentations, which can be implemented part. So the next question comes in is that, hey, you talked about an AI applications which is being deployed or managed by my organization, deployed within my environment. What about third party or SaaS applications? So for third party and SaaS applications, so third party may be a third party developed application deployed within your environment or a SaaS application. The recommended approach is to ensure that you have a baseline requirement. So you can ask for ISO 42001 certification, because that certification actually covers 80%, 90% of the controls which has been defined by your central bank guidelines part. So you can ask for that particular certification. In case if you have much more regulatory or agreement with the vendor, you can ensure that you can have a security questionnaire shared with them. You can ask for the AI bomb from the vendor so that you can validate those questionnaires, ask for red teaming evidences and observability logs to ensure that they have properly implemented. And definitely through contractual controls, you can also push these controls to your third parties and the SaaS application providers. So one of the questions which a few of our clients did ask was that who should own this particular AI governance framework, right? So what we recommend is that this AI governance framework should be owned by the information security team. It's not mandated that it needs to be owned by infosec team. It can be owned by legal or the AI team. But as CISA, we recommend infosec team. The guidelines doesn't specify that it has to be infosec. We recommend infosec team. The reason being that the infosec team follows the main controls, like in inventory, right? So we already doing an SBOM to identify the third-party packages and application. So that can be extended to an AI bomb construct. You can do an AI bomb and identify your AI infrastructure part of it. InfoSec team is doing your testing, application pen testing, which can be expanded to a GenAI application pen testing aspect, right? They are ensuring that there's a WAF or other application firewalls managed, deployed. They can also ensure that LLM firewalls are deployed. And also they take care of the monitoring part, SIM monitoring aspects. So observability can be easily be handled by InfoSec team as well. So from a recommended operating model, we do recommend that InfoSec team takes care of the controls, testing, monitoring, and assurance, while the AI engineering team takes care of the implementation of those controls, like fixing the models and configuring the LM firewalls and guardrails, while the legal and compliance team takes care of the privacy aspect, right? Because in the requirement, you need to inform the users that the users are interacting with an AI systems. You need to so all those privacy concerns comes into picture from a legal perspective, and from leadership aspect is basically risk appetite and signing off on the who is accountable for the entire AI systems part. So so that's on the ownership aspect. Now coming to the end of the webinar, we do have our AI Prism solution, which is our own solution, which already have around 5 patents with us. So we do have Prism Scan for scanning the models, Prism Strike, which is a comprehensive LLM teaming activity, and also Prism Secure, which is basically a layer-specific fine-tuning for securing that particular model. So we ensure that with these solutions, we can have an end-to-end AI security and a model-level defense in place. And if you are interested, we also have our CSP AI, which is the world's first NAB accredited certification course in the field of cybersecurity for AI systems. So please reach out to us, and we can share more details with you. And if you want, we are also doing a lot of our AI security briefing sessions to individual organizations, because every organization has their own AI deployment. So we do these briefing sessions to each individual organizations to help them in creating their basic framework for securing it. And that uh, AI security briefing session is definitely is of course a free session that we offer. So if you're interested, you can write to us, and we'll be happy to schedule those sessions for you. So with that, the open up for questions. So we have the Q&A panel, and you can please raise your questions out there.
Yeah. So before the question and answers, Ranju, thanks for that session, and Dr. Anjan as well. And as Ranju mentioned, we can always organize an AI briefing session for your organization just to understand how we can, or rather you can help yourself and we can do it. It's a no obligation session that we can do. So if you want to leverage that for your organization, please do contact us and we'd be more than happy to help you with that. And we'll also be sharing the session details and the recording with you, as well as with the presentation as well. So I think there are a few questions that have come up. Ranju, the first question is, what approach, tools, and frameworks can be used to perform real-time performance, drift, and security assessment monitoring of AI models in production environments?
Sure. So there are multiple tools in the sense. The tools is definitely we have our own AI observability tool, which is being launched in the AI summit happening on Feb 18th in India. So currently, um, from a tool perspective, there are the I don't think there's any open source tools which is available currently. From my observability, there's only commercial tools which are currently available part of it. So from an approach perspective, the approach as I mentioned is first run an AI bomb to identify all your inference points. Right? So for an application might have multiple calls to an LLM. It might have calls to your uh, uh, one LLM for one functionality. So when you're going to do an AI observability, you need to be able to capture the tokens of all these calls. So your AI form becomes your foundation from which you can ensure that you're able to capture all the tokens from all these particular interactions point. And then from a framework perspective, there is all ML algorithms which can use to identify if the model has able to has drift and everything. So currently, OWASP is working on a AI observability framework approach part of it. It is still not released. It's not released, right? It's not released yet. So because these are all new concepts comes into picture, so industry is becoming to standardize those aspects. So that's how we can able to do that. And from a security assessment perspective, uh, there is already OWASP top 10. There is already OWASP LLM testing guide which are available. There is also a guide on choosing which vendor or a tool to do OWASP LLM red teaming. So OWASP already has that details from a security assessment point of view. You can get it from OWASP part.
Thanks, Ranju. The other question was, can you show again the components of AI bomb?
So,
So probably you would like to take a screenshot of that while we will be sharing the recording as well as the presentation. But yes. Okay, the next question, Ranju, is if QCB requested evidence of AI testing and monitoring tomorrow, what can be shared?
so definitely the Gen application pen test report can be the report which you can share to ensure that the proper testing has been done. And the second one, from a observability aspect, you can able to maybe uh, if you have already deployed an AI observability tool, you can maybe share the uh, reports of the AI observability tool or the screenshots of the initial set of dashboards or any incident which the tool has already identified. So those maybe you can able to share as well. Yeah, Gopal.
Sorry, I was talking mute. If the vendor shares an ISO 42001 certification, what additional next steps should be taken?
Oh, so what I'll recommend is to ensure that uh, from my participation certificate, it just shows that okay, there is a set of proper controls deployed, but depend on you what's in your contractual agreement. If you have a contractual agreement where you can do an uh, fill a questionnaire, then maybe you can based on this thing can share a questionnaire and ask about how they're doing the AI observability aspect, then security testing and the controls they put for the model security part. So what I'll definitely like is the AI observability component because AI observability will ensure that uh, it covers everything, covers security, covers drift, explainability part of it. So it covers everything part. So if one thing can I ask apart from ISO 14001, I'll say that it'll be how they have deployed AI observability component.
Thanks, Ranju. One question again was, who's responsible for building and managing AI ethics framework or AI fairness policy? Is it the security team or the IT team? Who's
Uh, it,
responsible?
it depends on organization to organizations and how the organization is able to define it. So in some organization, it's a mix of both the AI team plus the infosec team which works together. In some organization, it is AI team with the privacy team or uh, data protection DPO team, which works together for creating the AI ethics framework part of it. So whether it is the IT depends on organizations and whether the team has that particular knowledge or the skill set for defining the same, right? Because both IT team and InfoSec team definitely needs to learn more about uh, how that Gen application works, how the agentic AI is able to interact. Because what we are observed in the live client environments is that the when I say AI team, I say development team and the team deploying the AI systems, they go much beyond from the understanding of the IT or InfoSec team. So the more knowledge the IT and InfoSec team will be able to take, they can take it up. And uh, end of the day, the it's depending on the organization decide where the final bug ends, right? Because it's definitely going to end with a CRO or with CTO perspective. So uh, the senior management needs to decide where who's able to determine. So
So hope
in
with that
some banks,
answers.
it's
Yeah. So the question was who's ultimately accountable, and as per you, it's either the CTO or the CRO.
yeah, we have seen one bank where CISO is being ultimate responsible. We have seen another organization where CR is ultimate responsible.
Okay.
So it's not currently properly defined that okay, this team is should be taking care of this one. Still,
Yeah.
uh, still working on, work in progress.
One very technical question, Ranju. How will we conduct expandability testing of our GPT class interface model integrated with the internal chatbot layer, covering horizontal, vertical scaling limits, latency peak load, and multi-tenant isolation?
We will conduct expandability testing. So when you mentioned about expandability testing, I assume that you're testing for the performance of the model uh, part of it. So definitely, like I mentioned, we can start with the Gen application pen testing, and based on your inference calls part of it, you can able to define your risk scenario. So one risk scenario will be that okay, how to ensure that I can do a wallet empty, right? So basically, empty the entire tokens of the wallet part. So what kind of test case can we do? Now we mentioned that okay, there is rating limit aspect, right? So again, your test case gets redefined, saying that within that particular rate limit, can I able to compromise that particular model or compromise that particular applications part of it? And when we say about a multi-tenant aspect, right? If you use the same model for multi-tenant, and if the aspect, there is a new attack technique called the memory attack, right? So within the model memory, is that model contain the data of the previous interactions of a different tenant? If yes, can we use it to abstract the data, or can we use that particular memory leakage kind of a thing to identify the other tenant or other client interactions point? So I'll say that we'll start with the Gen application pen testing, and based on your interactions of that particular model, able to uh, uh, navigate or change based on the risk scenario that we generate, and then say mutate those test cases based on the techniques which is present. So that's how we can able to do that.
Okay, we probably have.
Also, to add on to what Ranju mentioned, it's also very important that GPT is a probabilistic kind of a model. It's very important to look at the level of inference, the kind of reasoning, what the expandability testing is basically trying to cover in terms of how the profanity and other parameter basically scores with respect to it. And that's where a very structured and a very layered approach of testing is what is very important in such kind of cases where you are looking at a thorough testing of such kind of models with a conversational chatbot, which can give the model insights as well as the ability of the inference what the model basically makes in such cases.
Thank you, Ranjan. Any other questions, please? We probably have, though we are a little over time, I can take one last question if there is. So I think there's one, has OWASP come up with Gen AI application testing guide? This would be the last question, Richard.
Let me just take up that question. Yes, OASP has come up with the multiple different guidelines, especially with respect to the Gen AI application pen testing and agentic framework. And as Ranjru rightly mentioned, we also have the vendor assessment part when there is a third-party AI application involved in it. So OASP covers a spectrum of evaluation guidelines, which is there for testing the Gen AI application pen testing, and significantly gives an insight of how it has to be thoroughly covered from an end-to-end perspective when it is involved with the Gen AI APT testing part of it.
Thank you, Dr. Anjan. I think no more questions, and then we have run out of time as well. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining the session today. Hope it was helpful. And if you need any help from CISA, we are always there, stand by as a partner for you. And thanks once again for joining this webinar. Thank you, Dr. Anjan and Ranju. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.